was the first time you used a computer?
Oh, I think I was about 13 or 14, which is a frightening number of years ago. And I was pretty hooked pretty quickly.
What was the first project you worked on that got you interested in programming?
Well, before I had really done any programming, one of the first things I did when I was like 12 or 13, I entered a science fair. And my science fair project was building a machine that played tic-tac-toe. But it wasn't a computer, it was a whole bunch of relays. It was kind of done the hard way. And that kind of got me into the whole, machines that do kind of complicated things. And then when I was about 13, I think, a friend of my dad's took me on a tour of the computer center at the University of Calgary. And we sort of wandered through, and it was just like, wow, this stuff is just great. It's just really, really, really lovely. And then I started going over there, every spare moment I had. I mean, this, in these days, in those days, there were no computers at home. You had to go to university data centers to be able to play with anything. Fortunately, my parents lived about 2 miles from the university, and so I could bicycle over there pretty much every day, and just had a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah. So when did you decide that you were going to major in computer science? Before you actually went to school, or once you got there, something made you decide that?
I never really decided it. I mean, it just was sort of, the only thing that made sense, right? I started, playing at the university with all this stuff, and then at some point, some folks there, I sort of got to know some folks there because I was using the computers without having a valid account. I was, technically breaking and entering, sponging off of other people's accounts, that kind of stuff. But got to know folks, and I started working at the physics department. And I was actually employed at the university for about 3 years before I actually became a university student. And then, it's not like I had any great soul searching, what am I going to major in? It's like, duh.
So after that, you finished college and then went straight to grad school for computer science?
Yep. Yeah. I had gone to undergraduate at the University of Calgary, and not a whole lot of really interesting computer jobs there at the time. It was either work for an oil company or work for a bank, neither of which really seemed interesting. And I had already taken on all of the grad courses at the U of C. So I applied to a bunch of universities in the States, and Carnegie Mellon let me in, so I went there.
How did you actually start Java? What inspired you to do that, or who else worked on it and stuff like that?
Well, there was a group of us that started out as about 3 people and grew to about a dozen, and we sort of got asked to go and look at and think about things that might sort of affect the son's business in the computing world. And we kept noticing folks using digital chips in places that just weren't computers. They were showing up in consumer electronics devices of all sorts. Cell phones were starting to happen. People were putting stuff in elevators and locomotives and all that kind of stuff. So we decided it would be interesting to kind of explore that world and get to understand it. And, you know, we toured around, visited lots of folks, decided to do kind of a prototype project because we're a bunch of engineers, you know, they can't think without building. And so we decided to build what was kind of like a PDA-based control system for consumer electronics. And we started doing it in C and C++, but we kept running into problems. You know, some of it was just hard to use those, but a bunch was, you know, a bunch of problems were because of sort of issues in low-level programming methodology. That, you know, whenever we talked to people in that world, you know, there were, you know, a bunch of constraints that they have that were causing problems because of the developer tools. So my part of that project was to go off and, you know, solve the sort of developer tool problem. And, you know, it's not like I just woke up one morning and said, ooh, Java, that sounds like a fun thing to do. You know, it's because we, you know, we're exploring an area. There was a place where there was pain, and I went off to go try to find out what would make that better.
Was the virtual machine your idea to as a way to solve that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. And what year did you start working on this, and then start to produce the first release candidates and things like that?
Well, I mean, we started talking about this in 1990. We're really working in earnest in 91. Delivered our sort of first prototype system, the sort of handheld remote with, you know, all this sort of software on it. And
was that the Star 7?
It was this little thing called the Star 7. Kind of like a Palm Pilot, you know, a decade before one could really build a Palm Pilot. And, you know, we finished that in September of 92. Then we, you know, spent some time trying to figure if we could turn some of that into a business. Spent a lot of time with cable TV companies and phone companies, and that was just a strange experience. And then in you know, late 94 and early 95, we took all this stuff, and, you know, because everything that we had done was all using internet technologies and such. So, you know, with all the stuff that was happening with the World Wide Web, we just said, okay, that looks like a good place to try this stuff out. So we did. It worked, and
the rest is history, right?
The rest is history.
Okay.